Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to talk about some React interview questions and answers. Now, I previously created a series on this topic with 4 videos, but this particular video comes as a personal experience because I've been interviewing recently, and I'm going to include some of the questions that I've been asked, and I'm going to also explain how I answer them. So there are lots of good material for this video. Typical React interview can happen in 3 different ways. One is often interviewer would ask you on the phone some verbal questions. The second way is you have to probably do 1 hour exercise, a coding exercise where you share your screen and they'll ask you a specific project and you have to code in it. And the third one is you get a take-home test. So I'm going to cover all 3 in this video. And welcome to Techsy Tutorials. Okay, so let's start with our verbal question. I hope you learned something new from this video. And the first question is, what are synthetic events? Please like, subscribe, and provide a nice comment. This looks like a very popular question. You can follow me on Facebook. Out of multiple 10 interviews that are interesting, 5 of them you can check out some technology answers. It looks like it's high in trend right now. Or you can follow me on Another way to ask this question is how events in React works. So it's the same way to ask a different question. I would suggest 2 courses on let's think about the answer and React and pause the video. And you can compare your answer with mine. Okay, so hopefully you thought about something. So I would start with this example. I would say, okay, events in React is basically in JSX, you would add on-click event, which is camel cased, which is different from the DOM event that you write in HTML, which is not camel cased. So this is not actual DOM event. It's a React event. And then you would have some sort of handle where here's the E, which is a synthetic event. So what is this event actually is, this on-click event? If it's not a DOM event, it is a wrapper around the actual DOM event. The second question would be, then why do we need a wrapper? The wrapper itself serves a purpose. It does multiple things, but one of the most important thing it does is it handles events for different browsers, because sometimes IE does the on-click event differently than Chrome does. So it handles all of these for different browsers in a similar way how jQuery does it. Also, synthetic events are pooled. What does it really mean? So not only you have to say this, but you have to explain this. Pooled means you don't have an event for each event. So they are pooled means they're reused, similar to like carpool, right? Which is for multi-purpose. So you have one event that once is executed, it's recycled and you can use it again for different purposes, right? So that's what it means. And this is actually changing in the next version of React. So just in case, if you're watching this video later on, don't quote me on this one because, everything keeps changing anyway. There is an actual way to use native events, and interviewer might ask you this question. So wait a minute, is there any way that you can actually write native events? Yes, but it's not recommended, but there might be some test cases where you may want to do this, and I don't know such cases where I would have to write native event in React. If you do know something about this, please comment it so that I would know and my audience would know. And again, this answer would be sufficient from this point of view. The next question is, how event delegation work in React? And this has also been asked a few times. I would say maybe 20% of the time. This also seems to be trending right now. So I would suggest, just pause the video, think about it, and then you can compare your answer with mine. And also, you might get this question as well. How does React handles events in a list element? It's sort of like a same question asked differently. So let's say if you have some sort of UL element, and inside I have a bunch of LIs, and I have events on each LI. And let's say if you have 1,000 elements such as this. Instead of adding event to each element here, you can handle this at the parent level, right? Basically higher level. In React, you don't have to worry about it because React actually does it internally. It does the same thing. So if you add an event to an element, it actually attaches that event handler to at the document level. And again, that is also changing a little bit in a following version of React. But right now, that's what, at least before 6.17, version 17, it's doing it. So the event delegation is a method of attaching event handler not to the element from which you actually want to handle event, but to a higher level element. And as I said, it's handled smoothly in React, so you don't have to do it. But because of this specific reason, a lot of interview would ask you just to find out if you know this or not. The next question is, list all the inbuilt hooks in React and their applications. They just want to know how many hooks have you used so far, and just list them all. I think this is a silly question. Most of the people use 2 or 3 hooks that are inbuilt. Here are the hooks. The main hooks are obviously useState, allows you to define state. useEffect allows you to handle lifecycle method. useRef allows you to set a reference to a specific DOM element or otherwise. And useContext, so you can set something globally if you want to, similar to Redux. And then there are some other hooks like useReducer, useCallbacks, useMemo, useImperative handle, and useLayoutEffect. And I'm not going to go through a single one of them. I would say, you have the list. Just go through it. If you have taken my React course on Udemy, I've explained that in detail. I'll provide the link in the description. Another question I've been asked, only few people ask me, but I think it's a very important question. However, it can be tricky as well. What are some of the best practices using React hooks? So they want to know some of the common practices that you use to make your code more efficient. You can answer it many different ways. When an interviewer asks this question, this kind of questions, typically they have a specific practice in mind. And if you don't say that practice, then they will assume that, you don't know anything, right? So I would suggest start with, okay, I use many of these practices, but let me just start with it. If I miss something, let me know. First rule, I would say, follow the hooks rules. Second is use a linter and follow the linter. So if you have a linter set up for your project, if you write some bad code using hooks, it would tell you that this is an exception or error. It may not be an error, but it would say, okay, you need to do this, right? And follow the guideline from the linter. Another thing I commonly do is that, let's say if you have multiple states, right? You have a state A, and this is supposed to be B, by the way, I forgot. Then you have a state B, and let's say inside a function, and the same function you call set A and set B with 2 different values, right? Now, what happens is when you call set A, this is async event, which means it's going to re-render the page, and then you call B. So there's extra redundancy here. So if you have this kind of scenario where A and B kind of goes together, create a one variable for them, right? That makes sense. So I can update both in a same statement called set AB or something like that. Okay. Another common practice I would suggest is, let's say if you have a use effect, and it's, let's say, similar thing where you are setting something inside the use effect, but here as a dependency you don't pass this something inside here, right? And this would actually throw you a warning if you have a linter saying, hey, you're using this but you're not passing as a dependency. Most of the cases it would work, but I would suggest to just pass it as a dependency. So if something this changes, at that time this would run as well. A last verbal question is, how often should you update React version? If you are, let's say, applying for much higher level, a lead position or architect position, they would ask you, so they wanted to know, what is your strategy in updating React? And I usually say, I don't let the React version go too far. Maybe my strategy is doing every 6 or 9 months. The answer they're looking for is planning. So how would you plan for all of this? So I would say in my project, I would have planned out so that I would have a week dedicated to upgrading React every 6 to 9 months. Whenever the major version comes in, and I'll keep an eye on it and have it ready so that the entire team would focus on upgrading. So now let's focus on actual 1 hour React coding interview. And I've done this a lot as well, and I'm going to share some of the pain points that I had. So one of the commonly asked question is to-do list. And pretty much I would say half the interviewers I've gotten, they've asked some version of to-do list. It could be just a regular to-do list where you have an input box and some button where you enter something and it adds that to a list, and you can remove from the list and things like that. Some people ask me how to update the list and things like that. Okay. Some people ask me have an API where it loads the data from there into as an initial list, and then you have some way to save it whenever you do any action, either remove it or something like that, right? So to-do list app, if you are giving an interview, it's a must at least practice building a to-do list app. Second one is searchable dropdown, and the third one is deeply nested dropdown. And I've had a few other questions, so let's look at them. Searchable dropdown is something like this, where you've given a box. You have to build basically all of these from scratch within 1 hour, which is actually quite a bit. And there will be some API where one interview had API where you have to user type something in. It actually checks against the API to see if this word exists, and that help you build that. If it doesn't exist, then it doesn't let you do that. Inside here, you have a drop down, you have a clean up button and all. It looks simple, but if you were to do a good job, I think it's 1 hour. It's not possible. I think it would take at least more than 1 hour, at least 1.5 hours if you do a really good job. But I would ask the interviewer, okay, what is important? Is the UI important or the functionality important? If UI is important, focus on UI a little bit more. If functionality is important, then have a crappy UI. But it's working. This one, I was asked at Atlassian, the company who builds Jira and Confluence. They wanted me to build this kind of a drop down. So they've given an API with nested JSON object. And this is not a fix. This could be any object, but it's nested. Like it will be an array inside object and stuff like that, right? And they want me to create a generic solution that you feed any JSON and it should build this nested. It could be like a 5-6 level down as well. I was able to build it, except when it comes to navigation, I did not do a good job, but I was able to build it all the way. Okay, now let's look at the take-home test. Let's say some companies would give you a take-home test where you'll get something like this. This is also again from Atlassian. They gave me a take-home test. It's a Jira board. So building a Jira board where you have to do, in progress, block or whatever, and then done category where these are the tasks you can drag and drop into each. And to build this, they said, oh, you can spend 2 hours, but I think this is definitely at least 5-hour job if you want to do a good job. And if it's a take-home test, you want to do a really good job. And what happens is after, they will set up a session with you where they go through the code, and they also ask you to modify it so they would know that actually it's you who wrote that. And also they would ask you on certain decision that you made. Why did you do this way? Why did you do that way? So that's all, folks. I hope you learned something new from this video. If you did, please like, subscribe, and provide a nice comment. You can follow me on Facebook. I have multiple groups that are interesting. You can check out some technology answers. Or you can follow me on Twitter and Medium. I started writing more articles. And you can purchase my courses. I have 2 courses on JavaScript and React. And thank you for watching.